Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be a very, very exciting panel. I am looking forward to it. But we have only about 35 minutes to talk about something and then Q&A, which we want to keep time for. Something as plural and diverse and spiraling as love. So we'll get right into it, and what a privilege to be here speaking with the both of you. We warmed up on Zoom a little bit a couple of weeks ago, so we've been waiting to regather here on stage with all of you. The title of today's panel is Ways of Being, which I think is a very generous and exciting title, and I'd like to focus a little bit on the question of being as we begin. The fancy word for being in anthropology is ontology, and it comes from the Greek word ontos. And the philosophical puzzle in ontology is that there are multiple ways of being, right? There are multiple worlds that are possible. And yet, when one inhabits an ontos or a way of being, it is a singular experience. Right? It's very difficult to imagine something outside of that world. And so very often, other worlds come to us in dreams and in mythology and in fiction and in fantasy. But I think the challenge that the two of you are posing to us is to take seriously the question of what it is to live alongside multiple ways of being as an everyday practice, right? And it's easier said than done, right? And so it takes a careful ethical practice to be able to do so. It's not the same as saying, okay, this is just your opinion or this is my subjective point of view. It's bigger than that, right? And what happens to this world when love is the central animating feature within it, right? And since we haven't sort of gone into introductions formally, I'd like to request our authors on stage to introduce themselves with a small description of what their pictures of love is, one code of conduct that regulates that world of love, and one misconduct that you think is a deal breaker.
Wow. You've asked for a lot already in your first question, right? Thank you so much, Ahona, for setting this up so beautifully. Delighted to be on stage with Mari, whose books we have been reading and loving and feeling terrified by them. You will know, you look her up, look her books up, and you will know why I'm saying that. Okay, so let me begin with the book for which I am here. This book is called Ola Loves. It's about journeys of polyamory in India. And just to say that one of the most beautiful things about polyamory that I've found is that we can define it the way we want to. So the way I have found myself defining this being, as you say, is the desire, ability, and practice of loving more than one person at a time with the consent of all. But what I add to that is with or without sexual intimacies. And that's a very specific thing that I want to add because in my experience and for me, romantic love has come in ways with or without sexual intimacies. And sexual intimacies is only one of the expressions of that love. So, because otherwise it gets either reduced to only that or on the other hand, it becomes, it is exoticized as only that, so at both ends. But in this practice, obviously, it's like a network, right? When you're talking about loving and practicing love and living with and nurturing relationships with multiple people, and all of them are in the know that this is the base on which you're working. Obviously, there has to be some basic rules. There are rules in every relationship, whether we like it or not, whether we talk about it or not, there are rules and there are deal breakers. For me, the key thing has been about being able to trust. Trust is at the heart of this because, And trust actually supersedes things like honesty, things like transparency, because all these other things about honesty and transparency are consent-based. How much do I want you to be honest with me is something that has to be talked about. How much transparency can I hold about your life or any other person, lover's life? So therefore, trust that the rules and understandings around which you are framing these relationships, you're building these relationships, those remain solid. So for me, the one conduct is the conduct of trust. The misconduct or the deal breaker, this is very hard because, you know, the whole life and being and living and loving around polyamory is often created to reduce deal breakers. The various deal breakers that are there in monoamorous lives are opened up, unpacked, re-understood, reimagined, and kept as non-deal breakers. So it's hard. But I would say dishonesty, actually, is the key deal breaker. Dishonesty in terms of thinking, being, and doing, like there is no connection between these, and there's intentional deceit. Because dishonesty can be intentional and unintentional, but intentional deceit is certainly a deal breaker when you are forming these relationships. So I will leave at that, and Marie, I'm looking forward to your response.
I totally agree with Arundhati. The major deal breaker will be willing dishonesty, yeah. And a terrible deal breaker, would be bringing a disease into the relationship. The worst being HIV, but there can be other terrible diseases, and that is a horrible deal breaker. There are many 19th century French novels dealing with syphilis, and most of the French writers in 19th century died of it. So that would be a deal breaker, and I'm sure they didn't always tell their wives. So, in my opinion, okay, I will tell my grandmother's opinion. I come from a small population in France. We are called the Basque. It's in the southwest of France. We have a specific language, etc. And my grandmother was a very wise woman. And she told me, if you get married, you can have many relationships. But if you get married, marry a man that you will be willing to talk to all your life, that you can have conversation with all your life. It's much more important than making love, she said, than sex. And I think it's a good point in a long-term relationship.
And the one conduct,
The what?
No, one code of conduct that you stand by.
The code of conduct, I'm not going to be very original. It's honesty. It's if you have a contract of being able to go with other people, you don't have to say everything, to explain everything. That could really lead to jealousy and hurt. You don't want to hurt your major partners, but be honest. Don't fake it. But it's very hard to do, actually.
It is hard to do in my relatively smaller experience, but I love what the both of you are saying about a transparency of intent, right? Because what that leaves us with is a much more fluid temporality for a relationship, in that you're not with a person who is fixed, right? You're with someone who can change their minds as you can as well, right? And given that that is possible, it is also possible to imagine rituals that would accompany these transformations, that structure the people with whom we would like to grow, right? So I wanted to ask you, each of you in your work, how you think of the concept of time in love, right? both as a question of the eternal, cosmic love, as when it happens to you, you feel like that it's all there is and all there ever was, but also in the kind of quotidian question of time, right? You have to divide a day or a week or seasons. My dream as a child was to have a lover for every season, and my favorite would get the monsoons. um, how would you approach the question of time? Because there is a pragmatism to it as well, right? What rituals of time have you organized around your many loves?
So, how many of you here have more than one kid? Many of you, right? More than one child? Yeah? Strangely, this gets never asked of a mother or a father, right? How do you divide your time between your 2 or 3 or 4 children? This never gets asked of any of us who actually deal with this concept of time in our lives every day. We are looking, when we think of relationships, partnerships, love, I find it quite terrible that we only think of romantic love almost as if it's on a pyramid right at the top. In real life, it's not like that. Given what phase we are in our lives, our aging parents, our growing children, our needy siblings, our families, extended families who need our support, people in our office, these are all part of our lives demanding attention, demanding time, and we give it. That's how we live. Somehow this question becomes more important when somebody has more than one partner, but it shouldn't be, because it is not that pyramid with these couplehoods that are at the height of it in terms of priority or passion or anything. In fact, I have seen people leave romantic partnerships because one partner didn't agree to an arrangement of looking after an aging parent, or partnerships breaking because there is a child on a spectrum and one of the partners is not willing to support that process of building that child's future. So I think another thing about polyamory that I love so much is it does not necessarily prioritize all the time romantic relationships, sexual relationships, over and above the many other friendships, relationships that we have. In fact, if anybody today asked another person, are you in a relationship? It's automatically assumed you're being asked about marriage or romantic. The idea that we have words like single and not single is again prioritizing a certain kind of relationship, defining your being, going back to that being, that a single life is like this and a non-single life is like this. So, but people live with, again, parents they have to look after. Sometimes siblings live together, and there are so many family structures, and the man, woman, and the child is not the only nuclear family structure. In fact, it's a very post-colonial, post-patriarchal, post-neoliberal kind of family structure. We had many kinds of families before. And those, I think it's time that we saw those. It's all around us. But I guess it's time that we see those and then think of the time question, that we are all currently struggling to give as much time as we want to those we love, including ourselves.
Well, I am 57 now, and it's time that I give more time to my female friends. I realize that my very busy life as a writer, I travel also a lot for my books. I have had 3 children. Fortunately, now they are all adults, and they have the same father, so we are engaged into a long-term relationship, but we have our own arrangements. We could say that later, but I want now to focus on my female friends, because I think I didn't care about them enough, and being friends with women is extremely important for me. I have a large number, I'm lucky to have a large number of female friends. I also have some male friends, But my female friends, for example, it was recently my birthday, and we had a specific reunion with friends from high school, friends from 40 years before. And it was wonderful. And they came from many parts of France in the house I have in Basque Country. And we had so much things to share and tell each other. And I think what my education did to me, it was a very macho education. The father was very important, etc. And the friendship between women was not very much valorized, put in value. And now I'm fighting against that. And I think my female friends are extremely important for me.
Wonderful, and thank you both for your responses to this, including Arundhati, the reminder that it's actually quite a callous question to ask a polyamorous person, or how do you manage your time, right? In the sense that what your politics as a polyamorous person does is that it restructures the relationship between kinship and time as it's inhabited in the everyday, and friendships, crucially, in a way that also allows you to organize it in the longue durée as such, right? What is it to kind of think not only of seasons, but of phases of one's life, and what parts of the self come to be expressed in relation to that, in the kind of back and forth we have between ourselves and social institutions such as marriage, that we do grapple with whether or not we step away from it at various times. It's always a contending force, right? It currently is, at any rate. I wanted to ask about jealousy, because I think jealousy is an interesting question to ask, not only in the kind of nosy way in which don't you feel jealous or don't your partners feel jealous, but also to think carefully of jealousy as something we have been instructed by as a key requisite for the performance of love, right? I am in love because I'm feeling jealous, right? And it's not as straightforward as that, right? Because with jealousy comes the idea of ownership, of property, of territoriality. A Marxist reading of jealousy would tell you that this is a key aspect of the heteronormative nuclear consuming family. It doesn't have to be this way, right? And yet, when you read poetry, when you watch films, when you're brought up on Hindi film music, as I was, it is also a key part in some ways of what it means to experience the rites of passage of love. And that kind of takes me to the next kind of ontological puzzle in this sort of examination of being and love that we're in the midst of. What do we do with the fact that love is both private and social? In the sense that I feel like we're all on the same page here in terms of how normative forms of love are instructing us as we sort of grow up, and it's possible to resist them. There's a politics that one can develop around them. But also the fact that music and art and films can make my own love and emotional life available to me in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do without, right? I mean, this is the kind of struggle I had. As in, do I give in to that love? Do I feel it when I'm listening to a song, or do I keep telling myself, no, this is some kind of conditioning and I should step away from it, right? It's also a valuable part of the emotional architecture in which we fall in and out of love, right? So what does one do with this simultaneously private and public performance of love?
Yeah, you very, very beautifully talked about jealousy and what it means in our private and public life. But I want to draw attention to another aspect of jealousy, which is the violence of jealousy. You know, when I was growing up in Bengal, one of the violent acts that happened against women, and many of us will remember that, is a lover that you moved on from, or a boyfriend that you moved on from, or somebody that you didn't like and you rejected, could very easily throw acid on your face when you were outside in the public realm. And often what used to horrify me was the way these acts of violence were talked about with so almost sort of a kind of benevolence that this person is, but ultimately he is doing it out of love, because I saw no love there in that kind of jealousy, right? And so to begin with, that jealousy, yes, it is almost seen as a, not just a performance, but like a measurement of love. As much jealous as you feel, that much you love me. I've been told about relationships where I didn't feel jealousy, that, oh, then you don't love me anymore, because that becomes like a measure of love. I think within the practice of polyamory, a couple of things that one does with jealousy and this aspect is to look at where does it come from. So yes, territoriality, like capitalism wouldn't survive without envy and greed, right? So that, of course, those are the political aspects. But at a very intimate level, I think it is fear of abandonment. So, you know, if you think of a person's heart as a room with just one chair to sit on, obviously jealousy is going to make you feel that if you are not sitting on that chair, then somebody else is and you're not even in the room. But, yes, or you know, somewhere out of focus. But if you could imagine the heart as a slightly larger place with like 3 chairs like this, some cushions, one mura, some futon, and it's possible for people to sit, stand, lie in different postures in that room, probably that fear of abandonment is not going to eat you up the moment something like this happens. And let me tell you, jealousy is not just about other partners. Partners and lovers feel jealous about each other's families, hobbies. Yeah, I've heard, writing, yes, things, vocations, professions. So it is the feeling and how it's, so it's something of mine is been taken away from me and then I will be bereft. So again, yes, polyamorous people feel jealousy, but it's not a deal breaker. You begin by saying, this is what I want to do to jealousy now. I want to understand it, I want to own it, I want to feel responsible for it. It's mine. It's not about the other person. It's about something that's happening in me. It's my insecurity, it's my fear. And like any other such feeling, you work with yourself, with your friend who advises you or your therapist, and you work through it and you deal with it depending on how severe it is. Yeah. But to understand it as your fear and your insecurity, I think is very important at the heart of jealousy. It's not something somebody else is doing to you. You're not being done upon. It's an agency of owning up to that and then seeing how it works out. Of course, we have another word. It's called compulsion, and I love it. And it's the opposite of jealousy, actually. If jealousy is in one spectrum, compulsion is in the other. And compulsion is a feeling that if my partner is with someone else and they are enjoying themselves, having a good time, I feel happy about that. Isn't love supposed to be about that? That you make your partner happy? So I find it going back to this idea of love itself, that jealousy dislodges actually over a period of time. Yeah.
It reminds me of the famous song, "If you love somebody, set them free." But it's harder to say than to do. In France, we recently came aware of the fact that killing a woman out of love is not love. I would say that it's about 15 years now that we do not call that passion crime as we used before, because it's not about passion. Passion is love, so it's not about passion. Nothing gives you the right to kill the woman who left you, the woman who doesn't want to sleep with you. Nothing gives you the right to kill her, to destroy her, etc. And now in the politics in French, in the medias, in the society even, we say the word féminicide. Feminicide? Feminicide. So now it's overly accepted as the right word for this crime, and the crime is very hardly punished. It's 20 years of prison at least. So there is some progress, but France is a small country. We are 67 million people now, and there is still about 200 feminicide, 200 women killed by their lover, their husband, or their ex-lover in France, which is way too much. But the feminist movement in France has really taken that very seriously. So it slowly changes. But before that, it was sort of accepted because it was normal jealousy, which is it equates jealousy with being the owner of somebody, with capitalism, actually. So it slowly changes, but it's a hard work, hard struggle. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds dangerously close to marital rape in India, right? And we can sort of bring this up, of course, in Q&A, but I want to keep moving because we'll speak for about another 10 minutes before opening up. I wanted to talk about how love is a political act, right? In the sense that to love and via love, there is a way in which we can rearrange our relationships to the rest of the world, right? Just as we are able to love because we see the world in a particular way, right? We see hierarchy in a particular way. We understand equality in a particular way. We understand the democratic in a particular way, right? And so do you think it is possible to be not feminist but still polyamorous? Or is it possible to be a fascist polyamorous person? Or a Hindutva national polyamorous person? Or to love the way you do? Because there is also the naturalized aspect of love. We love because we can't help but love this way. But politics is a little more than that, right? And there is a back and forth between our political choices and the love we cannot but help. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on how you love and the political stances one is able or unable to take?
Oh no, I must say, you know, this is the 30th or 32nd conversation I'm doing, and Ahona has come up with such interesting and demanding questions for us. Thank you very much for that. I can't think of being a feminist, being anti-fascist, being left of center, and polyamorous. I can't see them as separate beings. I can't. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask whether there can be. I'm sure there will be people who will say they are fascist and polyamorous. I mean, good luck to them and their definitions of these words. But I can't, because actually for me, I will go a step ahead and say that for me, and I realized this much later, that my politics and being polyamorous comes from very similar roots, which is that there is a deep faith in collectivity, there is a deep faith in believing in the multiple. This whole thing that you have about, you know, one nation, one religion, one culture, one leader, it is also against that. It's a way of saying that a single story is never enough, it's dangerous. You have to listen to all the stories. This multiplicity of life cannot stop, for me, cannot stop in the drawing room and living room conversation. It enters my bedroom because it is built around the same idea of politics, that if you're going to say this about being multiple and believing in the multiple and believing in the many, more than one certainly, and be so anti-one, I think, yeah, I can say that safely. I have a very strong anti-one. Then how can it not enter the most political of your being, which is who you love, how you love? So yeah, so I would say that, but yeah, there are others within the polyamorous world who will say other things. Yeah.
Just if you could, this is very interesting, and I'm just curious myself, but have you heard of how they articulate that justification?
So I can tell you about the difficulties I've had with those articulations, that, as I said, polyamory itself is articulated very differently by different people. So that is one place where this distinction is there. But also, I think many people feel that they can live in multiple worlds without any corridors between them. They are isolated worlds in their heads, and their politics is one thing and their home is another thing. And it is very troubling for me when I see, and I cannot understand, a very caring fascist man, a man who's fascist in the outside, even at their workplace. But when it comes to family and friends, the same person is. So I feel there is a lack of connection in their thinking. They're not thinking through it. And I think there's great opportunity there, which our political parties are, of course, missing, but many of us can do, and writers and poets and artists can do, is help them find those connections. And I feel that if they did find those connections, things might change more.
Well, I can only, it's my third trip to India, and I'm so in love with the country, and I've been to many places in India, but I cannot speak, of course, about India, because I don't know this huge country well enough. So I will only focus about the little country I know, France. And to me, it's obvious that you cannot be a fascist and a feminist. They fake it. They pinkwash it. So Marine Le Pen, his father, Jordan Bardella, are faking feminism, and they are faking gay and LGBT rights supporters. They are not. They pretend to gain the votes of the gay people or the lesbian people, but they fake it. And when you look closely at their votes at the assembly, for example, the right of abortion, who was won by the generation of my mother and Simone Weil in '74, which is a very important right for women, and we see what Trump does in the USA. So you can always change those very important rights. And I'm not very keen of Macron, but he managed with his government and his assembly to put this abortion right in the constitution of France. So it should be like a statue now. You cannot, well, you can move statues, but you cannot change it except in case of a coup or something really huge. But when you look closely of how Bardella and Le Pen voted, they didn't vote for that right. So we have to be very, very close to what they say and what they do. And what they say is not what they do. And what they do is not what they say. And that's why also fake news are so dangerous. So it's really hard to get well informed, especially as a woman and a feminist and a mother of queer people, which is, and I'm so proud of my children, because they are inventing a new world. My son is inventing a new way of being a man, a good man, who is not a violent man. And my two daughters are inventing a new way of being women, to be strong women, and I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, it does deserve a round of applause, and parenting is crucial in creating a world that can foster these politics, and my very well-equipped mother is clapping in the front row, but you need mothers like that to be able to have these thoughts. So thank you to those who do it as parents, but also as not, as you and I, right? Yeah. We do it in our own capacities as well, so no normativity there. I have one last question that I want to ask before we open up to Q&A, and I've been waiting to ask this. It has to do with how love is also a more than human way of being, right? There's a poet called Gary Tomlinson who I like very much, and he talks about how he wants to fall in love because he wants to sing like a bird, because he wants to gather like the ass, the donkeys, in that sense of community and safety, and because he wants to copulate like pigs, right? And so there's a way in which love allows us to transcend our human identities, right? And there is great liberation in that. There is transgression in that, which can be pleasurable. But there's also violence and danger in that. And Marie has a book that has kept us awake for a few nights. And so I'd like to invite the both of you to respond to love as a more than human form of being through your book, of course. But Arundhati, I was watching interviews that you've done online, and there was one particular particularly crude question that I thought was asked of you, when this lady who I will not name asked, so what then is the difference between humans and animals? Like, what separates you from animals then, if this is what you do? And I thought it was a terrible, really repulsive question to ask and really missing the point. But there might be an imaginative way of responding to that as well. So I want to close with that before we open up to questions and gather the thoughts that the room has.
Yeah, I wish I could have told her that, I just wish humans became more like animals, actually. And I haven't seen animals kill only for joy as much as humans do. So, but that... Joy? Yeah? I would say, love gives us... Love, for me, I've seen that, and this is also an answer, like if somebody says, what is falling in love for you? I think when I see so much beauty, courage, compassion, a will to live around you, not just in humans, but in all kinds of creatures, beings, and there is to memories, to places even, and there is this deep desire in you to connect with that. And I feel it somewhere comes from a much larger, probably cosmic idea where you are a part of, like you are stardust and part of everything that is around you. And there is this thing that always in your heart pushes you to connect to something around you. And in some ways, love becomes the way through which you do that connectivity. Love is the way through which there is that little bit of understanding outside of your human self. For me, it happens with plants a lot, not so much animals, but with plants. And there's conversation, there is seeing each other grow together, there is communion. And I think this need for communion is very important. We are quite a lonely race, right? So I think this communion is what actually keeps us alive. Having said that, the way we are going, it's not going to, right? Look what we're doing to everything around us today. So I think love needs to really be the political aspiration for now.
And also the ecology in which we grow.
Of course, yes.
Well, there are animals in all of my novels, I think, especially the first one, who is the story of a woman turning into a pig. And it had a huge success in the 90s in France. I was raised among animals because I come from a small village. So I saw a lot of animals around me, and I think we should call them the other animals, because we are animals. We are among animals. And if you think about eating another animal, the term other goes into my spine, and I'm a vegetarian because I cannot eat another animal because I am an animal. And when you know that calves, the cows, babies, they lick the hands of the butchers not to be killed, it's very hard not to be a vegetarian or even a vegan person. So I have a very strong relationship with the other animals. I also want to add quickly about the other question. Before, I don't want to seem angelic or utopian. I have to say that in Paris, in London, in here probably, I don't know, it's easy, it's even cool to be gay, to be lesbian, etc. When we come back to my village, my small village in Basque Country at the frontier of Spain, I always tell my kids, don't show up, don't wear these shoes, don't. My little daughter, the small one, she came out as a lesbian very candidly among the other girls of the village, and she was harassed. She was put away. So it's not perfect in France at all. That's what I wanted to say. In Paris, it's okay.
Would you like to touch upon the sexual harassment question?
The sexual, yeah, because we had a Zoom, a preparation before. We talked so much. It was very nice. Yeah, when I was a young girl in Paris, in Bordeaux, my first city where I was a student, and then in Paris, two big cities then, on French scale, I was harassed in the street all the time. Men interrupted me, all sorts of men, all social classes, all sorts of people. They dared interrupt me. Sometimes nicely, like, what's your name, etc., etc. But it's amazing, this authority that any sort of man or boy seem to have to interrupt a girl in the street. And when I walk in the street, I think, and very often I'm writing in my head. And each time these silly people, men, dared interrupt me, they interrupted an idea. Because I'm an intelligent, autonomous, important person. And they just saw me as a piece of meat, as a sexual object. And I was very young and I thought, is it my dress? Is it my hair? What is it? No, it's only because I was a girl, only. So be aware that in France, sexual harassment on the street is still a problem. Now we can record it to the police. Now the people can get fined, but it's still all over the place. So France is not a paradise at all for women.
No, I don't think anyone in Calcutta thinks it is in any case. But we have 10 and a half minutes to go, and I'd love to open up to the audience because it's also nice to see what's sort of going on in each of your heads. So we have, let's open to Q&A, and I don't know if there's someone in the audience who could take a mic around, but do put your hand up if you have a question, and we'll try to get to you. And please introduce yourselves as you ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Rajneesh. My question is, you explained very well the juxtaposition between polyamorous and the political angle. Other than the political angle, another deep-rooted issue is the socio-cultural norm, which is localized. She mentioned about France, and while we think Paris is the home of love and everything, but so in socio-cultural norms, and when you are talking about a polyamorous relationship, trying to do it drastically will lead to confrontation. How do you suggest that gradual shift or the change in paradigm to happen, considering they are long-rooted, deep, whether they are right or wrong is another matter, but they are deep-rooted. So how do you suggest that change?
You know, if you ask me, I feel the same way as 50 years ago when my parents were from two different castes and just decided to get married and face the music. How queer people 20 years ago when I was in college couldn't come out the way they do today. But they did. And some people were brave enough to do it and talk about it. And that's how it happens. Actually, you can only do it drastically. You cannot wait for others to make it happen. You do it. And then you face the music. And then you fight against that music. And then you do this. You come to LitFest, you write a book, and then you talk about it. You get Ahona to ask you amazing questions, and you get Mari to support it. And you get an audience like this that is still listening to it and not throwing things at you. You do it this way. There is no other way. I feel there's no other way.
And if I may, my favorite thing about the book, and I was telling Arundhati in the lounge, that it's a little bit like a manual of what to do when one is beginning a political life alongside polyamory or within polyamory. And what it does so beautifully is to give us another vocabulary within which to sort of live as such, right? And what you show us, and what you show us is that this vocabulary is not necessarily new, right? It's ancient, it's pre-colonial, it's global. And so part of the politics or part of the transformation that you're hoping for, and all of us are, is to sort of invite language that can help us along the way, right? Mari, would you like to respond, or should we gather some more questions? Yeah, maybe let's do 2 questions at a time so we can hear people's voices.
Hello. Hi, I'm Gargi. I'm a counseling psychologist by profession. And I don't have really any questions for your book. I wanted to share something from my experience of being a psychologist. I've had patients and clients who have been married in abusive marriages, who've stayed in abusive marriages for 20, 21, 25 long years. And when I've asked the woman in the marriage, when I've asked the lady that, didn't you say no? Didn't you stop him? Yeah. Her reaction to it, I still remember it, it just echoes in my mind. I'm not the feminist type. I was taken aback. I felt, when you all three were discussing about feminism, that is the first thing that struck to me was, till date in the 21st century, we are relating feminism to maybe not standing up for ourselves. That is what the definition of feminism has come across. I'm not the feminist type, therefore, I am not supposed to stop my husband from abusing me.
Yeah, I think we should all be feminists, as Beyoncé sang, you know?
Exactly.
And we should all be feminists because it's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of instinct, of survival instinct. I'm going to say an example that is less horrible, but still. My first husband, I was married twice. My first husband, we loved each other, okay? But at some point he told me, if you leave me, I will commit suicide. I will take my own life. And I realized it was not a love saying. It was not said out of love. It was said out of ownership, out of control. And you may know the gradation. In France, it's called le violentomètre. It's a gradation for violence. The first violence is killing, of course. The second violence is destroying the face. Or the third violence is suicide threat.
Self-harm.
Yeah, self-harm, yeah. And I thought, this guy thinks he loves me, but he doesn't. He thinks he owns me. That was not the major reason of our divorce, but it was still a reason of leaving, actually.
I do understand. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yeah? The lady at the back, and then the gentleman in the black coat.
Hi, my name's Anushka, and I was wondering what if the both of you consider, or actually the three of you, if you consider polyamorous folk as part of the rainbow or the pride flag, or personally, if you feel a belongingness toward it. Because Google has mixed things to say.
Okay, so you know, I was once looking for the definition of queer, and there are so many definitions of queer. But I love what Bell Hooks says. You should read her, because she says queer is any person who is at odds with the world and the way it is, and still finds the courage to thrive against it sometimes. And if that's the definition of queer, and if the rainbow is all about queer, then polyamorous people certainly do fit in. But within polyamory, there are people who are same-sex, who are heterosexual, who are straight, who are bent, who are all kinds of things. So yeah, I consider polyamorous people to be very much part of the queer world.
Yes, we have this wonderful thinker, philosopher in France, Monique Wittig. It rings a bell for all feminists here, I guess, and lesbian people and queer people. And she understood, she was part of the French theory with Derrida, with Deleuze, with Foucault, etc. And Wittig said that heterosexuality is a political regime. And when you don't think of it as a political regime, you miss the point. It's a political regime that is imposed on us as soon as we are born. It's a very strong political regime. As a lesbian herself, she thought about it as a dictatorship. But I think I'm tragically heterosexual. I'm struggling with my own heterosexuality for a long time. But Monique Wittig is a very interesting thinker who thought the straight regime as a political injunction, something that is imposed on us as early as when we are in our mother's womb.
But Marie, you are going to look at female friendships now.
Well, female friendship, we don't have time enough, and I would be happy to have another question, but what is the difference between love and friendship? You know, it's such a huge question. I wrote 20 novels about it in a way, so...
Should we do... Sir, did you have a question? Can we pass the mic 2 rows in front, please?
If there's more time, I'd love to ask 2 more questions.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Would you take the mic from her, please? Thank you.
Thank you. The man in black is Chinmoy Guho. You must have heard of him. We need some kind of homework. And the question I'm going to ask is, the subject of this session was body, self, and culture. Very important. I don't think the focus was always there, because there are two different cultures, multiculturality, interculturality. India is a country of 3,287,000 square kilometers. Who are we talking about? Are we talking about the educated middle class? Are we talking about the lower class? I'm sorry for using the word, and lower class, the relationships are totally different, much more open, much more, very, very different. And so it's a very, very difficult question. There are all kinds of provinces, all kinds of states. We have the middle class, we have the upper middle class, we have the middle class, we have the lower middle class, lower class. So it's not simple. C'est pas facile de tirer une conclusion. It's not easy to draw a conclusion. And when Marie said, very interestingly, that when the queer couple or whatever went to the Basque country, they had problems there. So even France has variations. And therefore, these questions should have been kept in mind, in my opinion. Another thing is, since Marie Darrieussecq, I'm speaking for the audience, is one of the greatest writers of France in the world today. And her books like Tourism, I think, played havoc in the 90s, and other novels also. Very important to find oneself in the skin of an animal. And she dealt with body, with femininity, with identity, and she dealt with liberation, all this. And so it would have been interesting if she could throw light on it, and we understood her problems, her points of view. That would have been more, I would say, concrete and interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shimnoy. Thank you very much. I'm honored by your words. But Arundhati Ghosh really focuses on those aspects in her book. It's really a very interesting book also on social points. And of course, polyamorous, she says in her book that it's not received the same way in different classes, in different parts of this huge country. Her book is really very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guha, for reminding us of the variations at stake when we talk about culture. And part of the politics, I think, that we're assuming we share is that of course, we sort of think through variation, and we think through caste, which is very important as a kind of social category in how desire comes to be articulated, in how the body is expressed. So thank you very much for these reminders. And we forgot to include a man on stage to help us structure today's conversation, but thank you for helping us.
Good afternoon, people. Ma'am, Marie ma'am, I have a question for you, and Arundhati ma'am, I have a question for you. Actually, Ahona ma'am, I have a question for all three of you. So, Marie ma'am, I'll start with the essay. My name is Riti Sharma. I'm a comparative literature graduate, and I've learned a little bit of French. So, pardon my French, I do not know much of it. But there's an essay by Helen Sissou called The Laugh of the Medusa. Could you shed some light on what kind of reflections it led to in the 90s? And how it impacted your work?
Sixous is a very important French thinker, the laugh of the Medusa, le rire de la Méduse. She's part of my education as much as Simone de Beauvoir. Sixous is part of this philosophical feminist movement that essentialize the woman. The idea is that we are not the same as men because we have a uterus and that we carry life. But Sixous goes much further than that. She's the first one who described what could be a feminine writing opposed to a masculine writing. And she made us aware that the whole academic, wonderful literature that we studied at school before in India, in France, was not literature, it was masculine literature. And that there is still a huge feminine literature to write. This idea is due to Sixous. And she went much more. We are, of course, not only uteruses on two legs. We are much more than that. But it may or may not make our writing a bit different than the masculine writing. I would just like to say that if my writing is different, it's not because I have a uterus or that I have kids. It's because thousands and thousands of years of domination, of masculine domination, made me the human being I am. And still, on our social security cards in France, the number that it identifies human beings in France, the men have number 1 and the women have number 2. And everybody goes like as if it was natural, and it's not natural. Thank you.
Arundhati ma'am, I have a question which is a rejoinder to that. The thing is that in Sisu's essay, we think about women writing of the body. Now, I had a question regarding polyamory and polygamy. Do you think that the possession of the body of the man or the woman in polygamy is similar to what is understood as possessorship in polyamorous relationships? Because we have a Gen Z variation of polyamory, if I'm not wrong. And we have a millennial variation, and we have a baby boomer variation. So, would you like to
What
shed
is
some
the
light on
last
that?
one?
Baby boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are many variations actually, because as you can understand, polyamory, when it's practiced by multiple people, definitions are created together by multiple people. So it's not just generational. There are so many other complications that include caste, class, etc., but also people's individual desires for the kind of relations they want to build. I will only make this distinction that when you're talking about polygamy, you're talking about the institution of marriage in which a person can have multiple wives or a person can have multiple husbands, depending on the cultural context. But marriages are about alliances. They're not necessarily about love. The unfortunate thing is that very recently we have conflated love and marriage into the same thing, but they aren't. Marriages were always contracts, legal contracts between people for various things, including alliances of families, etc. Love is a very different ballgame altogether, which brings desire and many other things into play. So what you've asked could be a class for like 2 hours, but you have, because that's the depth of your question. But I would say that look at polygamy as an institution of marriage and polyamory as the desirability and practice to love more than one person.
So, ma'am, how does heteronormativity come or normativity come into the whole aspect of love in this case? Because you mentioned bell hooks, and she talks about how men should be able to also learn how to love. So
yes, among many things, she does talk about that. But I mean, the heteronormativity is like you could be a straight person and still be polyamorous, right? And you could be a queer person, and I mean, your sexual orientation or sexual identity or sexual preference doesn't play into the idea of you desiring to be in love with more than one person. They are, again, two different things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I think my mic has been switched off. Is that how? Okay, they really want us to get off stage. Yeah. Okay. No, I just. We should. Maybe we take one last question and then we do a quick round of thank you and responses if possible, and then leave.
Okay, namaskar. My name is Devdeep, and I'm a lawyer and a psychological therapist. So my question is, as authors, when you sit down and decide to write on a controversial topic, and you are aware that there can be a backlash, or you have friends and family who might have judgments or a different perception once the work comes out. So, like, what keeps you going, and like what's the motivation?
You are absolutely right. When I was younger, I was a bit scared of my parents' opinion because my books are often a bit sexual, for example. But I realized that, yes, they could be a bit shocked in their modesty, but in fact they were very proud of me and very proud of my success. But now I am afraid of my kids. So you're always, between a rock and a hard place. When you write, it's always uncomfortable to write. Why do I go on? Because I cannot do anything else. Like as writing, it's like breathing for me. Thank you.
Mari said it. And one more thing that I often do is just find inspiration from people who've done it before me. And it's like we are all as feminists or as anti-fascists or as polyamorous people or as queer people, it's great to have giants on whose shoulders we stand. And the stories of those giants are amazing. They keep us going, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's actually a wonderful question to end with. We can't help but write, just as we can't help but love. And that is Sisu's point, right? It's the question of voice. One can't help but let out that laugh, despite our bodies and because of our bodies. So thank you very much for receiving our voices this afternoon, and thank you for the great privilege of being in conversation with the both of you, and thank you very much to the organizers. Thank you.